Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, the universe building on our favorite TV shows and movies takes so much more work than any of us can truly comprehend. And guess what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. If you like, and if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are, please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, gives you a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seat YouTube channel, so if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, God knows we would appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Threads, and probably a few other places at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest in the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. On this episode, we're still in the realm of Apple TV Plus. We're singing its praises quite a bit. But if you haven't already signed up, go do it now, because you're missing out on a bunch of good stuff. But on this episode, we're looking into the fantastic show Lessons in Chemistry, starring the one and only Brie Larson, and it's a period piece, which means production design and set decoration are key and vital elements to the entire process. And we had the unique pleasure of talking with production designer Kat Smith and set decorator Lori Mazuer about the art of the job and doing it all and sort of staying true to the vision of the show and all that fun stuff. But that's it. It's good stuff, and we hope you enjoy it. And, well, if you haven't already enjoyed it, go sign up for Apple TV Plus and watch Lessons in Chemistry and all the other fun stuff that they got going over there. But first, enjoy our talk with Kat and Lori, because between you and me, it's a darn good one. All right, so, well, first, obviously, Kat, Lori, obviously, just to kick it off, just thank you so much for the time today. And, congratulations on all your work in Lessons in Chemistry. I love the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was so much fun to work on. So
No, I'm curious on a show like this because it's so steeped in the period. Like, I'm curious, like, how early on in the process do you get brought on? Because, I can imagine there's going to be a degree of, obviously there's building, but then there's going to be sort of having to run around and find stuff as well at the same time to really sort of get the right feel for what the showrunners want.
yes, so we had 13 weeks of prep, and we had 4 stages of sets. So it wasn't like I would say the average amount of prep I used to get was like 8 weeks, sometimes 10. So a little more than we normally get, but probably a little more rushed than a period show would be, maybe.
Much of that prep time for me was research. And we had a team that would research each set to make sure it was 100% accurate and authentic.
And we would quibble about what was authentic and what wasn't. Like we would pass back, like I'm like, that phone wasn't around, and then she'd come back to me with like an ad for the phone for the right period, and I'd be like, oh, that doesn't make sense. And then, we were really, really into it, like maybe a little too.
We were. We had fun with it. And it wasn't an easy show because we had so many sets. And, on top of it, of the period aspect of it, we had a lot of science too.
Yeah.
And you can imagine how difficult it was to find the authentic equipment for many of the labs that we had.
Yes. And my husband is a scientist, and he had helped me out when I did The Dropout, which was all science. And Lori doesn't know this, but I did show him a photo once of our lab, and he sent it to his science friends for criticism. And I was like, Dan, it's really hard to find stuff that's period accurate, and so thus I think was the whole thing about the hot plate. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know if I,
we did have a hot plate that was inaccurate in one of the sets.
but
Well, I didn't notice. So.
well, only a scientist would notice. And this was the scientist who had used that exact hot plate in the 90s. And I think he may have assumed that it was from the 90s, but a lot of the like basic stuff in a science lab is continuous through periods. So it's not like he was absolutely right about that. I'm not 100% sure of that.
On a show like this, what's the ratio generally of like finding the authentic thing that you can put in versus the, okay, we're going to have to recreate it. Here's a picture.
Whew. I mean, I think we really lucked out on things like eBay and being able to use the actual item. I mean, use it in a decorative way. Although there were times we heard from the set that they were turning on some of these machines.
Oh dear.
And I'm like, no, that's not acceptable. You can't just improvise turning on a centrifuge because you don't know. Like, of course, we're getting them and they're not working anymore. That's why people are selling them. And we did have a lot of lab equipment that worked for the experiments, but it's not the kind of thing that you can do a lot of improvisation because, of course, you really do have to buy and dress for the exact scene and not like what somebody wants a background person to be doing.
But
I would say the ratio of fabrication versus what we bought on eBay, and the like, maybe was about 20%. We did fabricate almost everything in the oocyte lab. The oocyte lab was the frog lab, and the tanks that the frogs were in were a little different than modern tanks we have today. They had a thicker frame. And so we made those. And we also made, if you remember, Kat, the crystallography machine.
Yes, I mean that's something you can't get. It's
Yes,
it's an old enough item that, and it's kind of a very specialty science. That was for the scene where Elizabeth is at UCLA studying, and she's
yes.
assaulted, and we made that entire background machine that was there.
that's absolutely wild. And I mean, even just sort of the simple things of, please don't turn this on, it might blow up, because no one's ever used it in a few decades. That's not even a thing that would come across my brain.
Well, one thing that you may not know that we were very careful with were light plugs, because I mean electricity plugs, because back then they didn't have the third prong.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we had to be very careful not having things that plugged in that had three prongs, and having plates that only had two.
Now I'm curious
Details.
because obviously this is like, obviously you're dealing with a showrunner and but you're dealing also with multiple directors. Like at the end of the day on a show like this, like who do your departments answer to? Because I'm always fascinated on the relationship of when different directors come in on one run of a show because everyone's always going to have a slightly different vision of how to do things.
No, that is true. I mean, the rule of television is that, of course, the showrunner takes precedence over the director, which is different than movies. But for me, I feel like this person's come in, they have a fresh perspective. I want to give them what they ask for because it'll improve the show. Like they want to see more, they want to do more. And that's all very beneficial to the art department, obviously. So I do try to collaborate a lot with the director and make sure that they're getting what they need.
It really feels like for both of you, so much of this job is problem solving. Like, would that be an accurate thing to say? Because again, it's one of those things where people can like production design on one end almost feels like a nebulous title, but it also feels like you have to do a lot at the same time. Or the same with set design. It's not just the simple minutia of it all. It's being able to find sort of those little things and those little adjustments that will make, a good shot into a better shot. I can imagine is probably the best way to describe it.
Well,
I
that's
agree. I often say that too, that, for me, set decoration, set design is problem solving. It's putting the pieces of the puzzle together to create the most authentic background for our character.
well, I mean, specifically, there was a group of episodes that was directed by Millicent Shelton, and we had to find a uh, set that was like a freeway just being built, the 10 freeway through Los Angeles. And of course, you look at that script and you're like, what are we going to do? This is impossible. Like how it's going to have to be all visual effects. But she didn't really want to do a lot of visual effects, I think. I mean, I know she didn't want to do a lot of visual effects because I think she felt that as real as we could do it, she would use visual effects as kind of the icing on the cake. And the location guy found this incredible location that could work for that. And then almost immediately thought, oh, this is going to be really tricky logistically. And everybody around us was like, oh, I don't think we should do it. It's going to be too hard. And the director and I were kind of the lone voices saying, this is going to be incredible production value. And so I really worked hard with all the departments, transpo and everything to make it work. And then with set deck, she found things that could block, non-period details. We use that a lot. Like if there's like a whole city behind us that is obviously the wrong period of building, then we'll use blocking devices in set deck to make sure you don't see that.
For sure, for sure. Now, I mean, I'm curious from both your departments, how hands-on are you with someone like Brie? Like, does Brie come to you, Lori, and say, "Hey, can I have X for this scene?" Or, Kat, can we do, XYZ? Like, how much back and forth is there, especially when it comes to sort of the fine tuning for these actors to find sort of that one thing that get their character over the top?
Go
I
ahead.
think I had a little bit more interaction with Brie than I did. So I'll let Kat answer that question. She has a good story.
Yes. So Brie was a producer. So basically, at the very beginning, with the showrunner, we had some early on meetings where I would show Brie what we were thinking of for the sets. And one of the sets was the kitchen for the Supper at Six. And I had it designed sort of like a typical Los Angeles ranch style, all wood country kitchen. Um, and she basically looked at it and said, I love this kitchen, but I think that's a problem because I think it should be horrible because this is some guy's idea of what a woman wants for a kitchen. So you should make it what you think that male gaze is. And so I like went in a completely different direction and made it. I was worried that like if I did an all pink kitchen, that would be too like too much of a stereotype.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but then I kind of leaned into it, and then I realized also in black and white TV, they used pink a lot for like a gray medium. So it ended up making a lot more sense. And it also did a little more dramatic architecture than I would have, kind of like a Hollywood Regency style, which was popular at the time. And I think it worked out really well, and that was her advice.
Now, from both your perspectives, what's the creative payoff of your jobs? Because I can imagine on one end, there's going to be, being able to appreciate the recreation of architecture, or this, that, or the other. But at the same time, I can imagine there's going to be like no one noticed the pen in the corner, and boy, that really popped next to the phone kind of thing. Where is the moment of joy for both of you? Like, is it in the bigger moments or is it in the small ones?
Well, for me, I would say the smaller ones, the smaller moments. When I dress a set, try to be as accurate as possible, but I also, not just for the camera, I like to provide things that make the director happy, but also the actors, that can put them into their role, make them feel better about their character, give a better performance, whatever that might be. If it's flowers on the desk
Right.
or, something like that. Kat, what would your response be?
Well, I was going to say what it brings to mind is in Harriet's bedroom, that beautiful dresser, and Lori dressed it so accurately and so beautiful, like accurate period makeup, things that this particular character might have. And I just loved it. But we didn't get to see very much of it, of course, because maybe it wasn't the direction they were looking in or whatever it was. But little moments like that, I just loved walking through that house, Harriet's house, and looking at all of the artwork. We had a whole story set up where they collected artwork from artists of the day. There were pictures of their relatives from long ago. I mean, there was a lot of detail that went into that set. But in general, I get as much from the bigger moments as I get from the smaller moments, like just like the wide church scene, where it was like Depression era Midwest, and we went inside a church that just we happened to find as a location. It was originally written as a tent, and then or in the first episode, watching that walk from the exterior all the way interior, all the way to the less the Supper at Six set, and that was entirely Sarah Dina Smith's idea, and really we had to push it to get all that scenery made, but it was so beautiful. All of those moments are great.
Now, I mean, just to put a bow on this, and I mean, I'll ask you both this. Lori, we'll start with you, but I'm always curious on how people sort of get into the business. Like, was there something you saw at a younger age that made you appreciate and I want to go do that? Or was it just a question of like foot in the door, falling into it, and then falling in love with it?
I have a really good story about my background. I graduated from college. I had a double major in art history, and I wanted to paint for the rest of my life. I was waiting on tables at the time, and a friend of mine was a casting director and asked me if I wanted to be a stand-in for Susan Sarandon. I had bright red hair at the time. I said, sure. It paid more than waiting on tables. And as I was observing and standing in on set, I'd watch the art directors and the set decorator and the on-set dresser and their collaboration and everything they did. And it just sparked in me. And I said, I want to be a set decorator or a production designer at the time. And I felt like my background kind of set me up in a serendipitous way
Love it.
for what I do today.
Love it. Kat, how
Yeah.
about
Well, I went to college for theater design, so I think, when I was a kid, I loved watching movies and I loved the way they looked specifically. And but I didn't think I would become a production designer. I kind of thought maybe I'd be a director. But then I got to college and I thought, no, that's not what I want to do. And I became a theater designer in college. But when I graduated, I got a master's degree in theater design. It seemed obvious from where I was and what I was doing that really the way to get a job in design is to get into production design. And I got my job on a TV show as a PA in the art department, and then just basically made my way up to the top eventually.
Well, I love it because I mean, again, I always like hearing people's stories, but just especially on this show, the richness and the detail in the design and the care of making this all feel as authentic as possible really adds another layer to the show. And I mean, I think you've both done great work on this show. And I just want to say,
Yeah.
Kat, Lori, just thank you for the time today, and I just congrats on the work.
Thank you
Thank you
so much.
so much. Thank you for your interest. It's
Absolutely.
It's not often that we get people who are interested in our particular work.
Well, you know what? I mean, I've always really been fascinated just being able to talk to anybody sort of behind the scenes because I mean, at the end of the day, it takes a village to make these shows and these films that we all love and adore, and
Absolutely.
everyone deserves a moment to talk about it for sure. But I mean, again, just thank you for giving me the time and thank you for giving me a little insight into making a show like this.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.